Happy Transgender Day of Visibility. Leave it to us to come up with a special day with two more syllables than International House of Pancakes. Coincidentally, we're just as delicious with maple syrup. To celebrate this year, I thought I would condense 53 years of torturous soul searching and obsessive, extensive autodidacticism into about 10 to 15 minutes of easily digestible information about the science of sex and gender. Fortunately for all of you, besides peerless kitchen skills and amazing legs, I've been blessed with the ability to do just that. Hopefully, I'll be able to provide another resource for all of you to share with any friends, coworkers, or family members who think J.K. Rowling knows what the fuck she's talking about. But where to start? Even the incredibly gifted shit disturber needs a jumping off point that will grab the listener's attention. As I pondered this one snowy morning recently, the universe, in one of its more amazing moments of pointed me towards John Fillmore, a bolo tie wearing, common sense talking David Crosby wannabe from Arizona Legislative District 16, who added to a depressingly long list of cringeworthy quotes from Arizona legislators regarding transgender people in a recent hearing of the House Government and Elections Committee on House Bill 2725. This bill, introduced by Representative Fillmore, presumably in his capacity as an expert on the biology of sex and gender, an expertise gained, no doubt, in his many years selling swamp coolers and gas fireplaces, would mandate a document issued by any agency, board, commission, or department of this state may only indicate an individual's sex as either male or female. At the hearing, Representative Fillmore expressed an obviously deeply felt frustration that is common to all who feel compelled to opine without the benefit of doing any actual research. What's going to happen when someday someone wakes up and they want to go to a far extreme and identify as a chicken or something, for crying out loud? Where do we draw the line? Granted, I'm not a home fixture salesman, but please allow this layperson to suggest that we draw the line at legislating from a place of scientific ignorance. In a wonderful bit of coincidence that perfectly represents the science and empathy projecting zeitgeist characteristic of Arizona's legislative history with the trans and gender variant communities, the beginning of the NBC story I saw about Fillmore showed a few-second clip of John Kavanaugh, he of the infamous bathroom bill battle of 2014. That bill basically demanded that transgender people carry their birth certificates for presentation on demand to anyone questioning their right to use the restroom into which they're walking. During the course of that hearing, even Kavanaugh's allies in the committee seemed to be uncomfortable with his incredible lack of knowledge about the issue. And I will forever love Representative Leila Alston for asking him if he expected us to just go to the bathroom in the bushes. But I digress. What exactly is gender? And more importantly, are there more than two ways to experience it? A great deal of the confusion people have when it comes to sex and gender comes down to semantics, to equating sex and gender. Strictly speaking, sex refers to the set of internal and external physical characteristics related to our role in the reproductive process. From the earliest eukaryotes, life on Earth evolved to complete reproduction by bringing two separate creatures together to blend their genetic material through conjugation. It is believed that this adaptation came about to reduce the chance of genetic mutation killing a species off. Each partner in the dance brings identical sets of genes, and for the most part, if one partner has a defect in one or some of their genes, the good genes contributed by the other partner will cancel the defective gene out. Over billions of years, as higher and higher life forms evolved, so did the sexes. Most likely for no other reason than that a binary was the most efficient way to evolve. The functions of reproduction split, one sex doing the impregnating and the other doing the gestating. This is sex. You've probably heard the term gender is a social construct. and you may have been confused. Let's face it, the people who spend their lives studying and trying to explain such things to us are sweet, lovely, dedicated people, but they don't always have a knack for clarity. So, what does it mean? Gender is a social construct. Let's use Western culture as an example. The different societies which developed under the Abrahamic religions, which operate with a binary view of gender. In other words, according to this view, since there are only two apparent sexes, there can only be two ways of being, either male or female. And what's more, we are only allowed to be what our physical characteristics at birth suggest. But gender isn't just what we look like. More importantly, it's what we are expected to be based on historical observation. By that I mean, generally, humans with female genitalia were observed to be more nurturing, intuitive, relationship oriented, tender, emotional, to name just a few characteristics. And humans with male genitalia were observed to be more aggressive, dominant, assertive, and emotionless, to name just a few characteristics. Over time, these generally true observed characteristics came to be viewed as requirements. If you have female genitalia, you must be these ways. And if you have male genitalia, you must be those ways. This is gender. Okay, from society back to biology. What is gender identity? And how do we know it exists? Simply put, gender identity is the sense that every human is supposed to have of who or what they are. For lack of a better example, it's the set of operating instructions programmed into each brain in its earliest developmental stages. A disorder of gender identity, then, such as being transgender, can be compared to the accidental placing of a Mac operating system into a PC, or vice versa. Or in the case of the non-binary people, which give Representative Fillmore his puppy-like head tilt, an unidentifiable operating system. Have you ever heard of proprioception? This is the sense which allows our body to perceive its location and movement in real time and make any adjustments to motor control necessary. This allows us to do everything from walk across the room without hesitation, close our eyes and touch our nose, and then pretty much everything else related to motion our body does. It is an endless series of feedback loops from mechanosensory neurons located in muscles, tendons, and ligaments, which, working in concert with the brain and without any conscious effort on our part at all, keep us mobile. It's what tells the brain at any given moment where the rest of the body is. If the right pinky finger is extended or flexed, if the left leg is in front of or behind us. And it also sends to the brain feedback on our environment related to motion. Are we standing on the hard ground or on an inflated surface, such as in a bouncy house? And what adjustments must we make in order to move? It is supposed to be autonomic, like breathing, so that when functioning as designed, proprioception allows us to perform all movement without having to think about it. Quite literally, gender identity then is proprioception for the soul. Just as proprioception for the body is supposed to orient our bodies to place, gender identity is supposed to orient our brains to our physical reality. It is a combinatory effect dependent on different parameters such as brain structure and chemical makeup, which, when functioning as designed, is supposed to constantly reinforce the sense, I am a boy or I am a girl. But if science has taught us anything, no organism has evolved free of the occasional predictable glitch. Mutations and variants in biology exist everywhere. Up to a certain point in human evolution, there were only brown eyes, until, of course, there were blue eyes. Up to a certain point, there was only brown skin, until, of course, there was also lighter and then whiter skin. And up to a certain point in human evolution, all males knew they were male, and all females knew they were female, until, that is, one of them didn't. How do we know these variations are real? Interestingly, non-binary gender identity in humans has always been known to exist. Just a cursory look at cultures around the world demonstrates that outside the societies that have been developed by the followers of the Abrahamic religions, there is a rich historical tradition of humans in the absence of any scientific confirmation, believing their fellow humans who have said, I'm not what you think. From the Mahu in Hawaii to the Fa'afafine in Samoa, from the Whakaleti in Tonga to the Katoi in Thailand, from the Hijra in India to the Bangala in the Congo, from the recognition of Mashoga in Kenya and Tanzania to the Mamluk in Egypt, and here in the Western Hemisphere, in the many different indigenous cultures which were thriving for centuries until Europeans insisted on civilizing them. Humans from since before the invention of agriculture and writing and civilization incorporated into their societal roles the recognition of people whose brains were not wired according to manufacturer specifications. The term two-spirit is, sadly but predictably, misunderstood by non-Indigenous people and has been appropriated by non-native LGBTQ people, but it encompasses an understanding of biology across many cultures that we, who purport to know it all, have chosen to ignore. I'm a writer, and I have a love for words that transcends my appreciation for pretty much anything, except strong coffee, menudo, or surrealist art. But sometimes I recognize that we fall into the habit of using words that end up creating confusion rather than clarity. The use of the word identify when it comes to gender is one of those words. When I hear identify, especially as it is understood and used by people like John Fillmore, it seems to connote intention, a choice, as in, hey, today I'm going to identify as a chicken, or look at me, I'm a science expert. It's an admittedly poor way to explain what is supposed to be, like breathing, autonomic. Earlier, I asked how we know any of this to be real. Besides first-person accounts ad infinitum since time immemorial, we now have the benefit of that seductive temptress, science. Not the science of Marjorie Taylor Greene, but actual fucking science. And I'll add, before I give just these few examples, that while we know that a process or structure has evolved, the genesis of the process or structure may still be unclear. We know the whats, but we don't always know the whys. For example, we know that the process by which the genitalia of a fetus develops, all fetuses are sexless for the first 6 weeks of development. It's a process separate from sexual differentiation in the brain, the development of brain structure and gender identity. Both are dependent on the release of hormones at specific times. And we know that sometimes, while hormones may be released that instruct the fetal genitalia to become female, an unexpected surge of testosterone may cause that brain to become masculinized. And by that, I mean that the brains of men and women are structurally different in ways that are apparently key to our sense of self. The straight gyrus, for example, a piece of the frontal lobe, is about 10% larger in female brains than in male brains. And this has been found to be the case in both non-transgender and transgender women. And then, of course, we have the myriad instances of sexual and gender diversity known as intersex, where the differentiation between male and female can sometimes become blurred at the chromosomal level, often resulting in children born with dual or ambiguous genitalia. Some people are born appearing male, but they have two X chromosomes. The permutations are seemingly endless and exactly what you might expect in a world with thousands of examples of gender and sexual variance in the animal kingdom. But just in the morning I wrote this, I read an article about a cardinal seen in Western Pennsylvania that is both male and female. If there was ever a true gender binary, it existed for like a minute, several million years ago, and then the universe improved on itself. Before I go, I do have one quick message. for all of those convinced beyond an uninformed shred of doubt that all of this is bullshit, especially those of you with loved ones who are trans, loved ones you might have rejected. Despite all of the time and years I put into learning about what makes me so damn glorious, I'll admit something to you. None of what I've just told you should fucking matter. Love shouldn't be about someone having to spend years learning and researching to prove their existence is valid. They shouldn't, like your precious loved ones, have to lie awake night after night in a pool of their own tears, wondering why you choose to disbelieve the most sacred, wonderful trait they're telling you they possess. They shouldn't have to be among the 41% of trans people who feel no other option than to attempt suicide. I've done the research and the talking here. Now it's up to you to process what I've said and make a choice. Please, for our sake, choose to love.